morning. This week we're going to be working on a landscape inspired by the artist Jen Arani. And she does landscapes that are black and white down at the bottom with the colorful sky. So we're going to be doing something similar, and we're going to put ours inside of a little snow globe. Okay? So before we get started, let's talk about the different parts of a landscape. So a landscape is a painting or drawing, any artwork that's mostly of nature, okay? So here we have a winter landscape of the mountains. And when we're trying to make our landscapes look more realistic, we include some different parts, like they're going back into space. So we have the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. The foreground is going to be the part that's at the bottom of the paper, and it's what's closest to you. So the things there are the largest, okay? Like this tree is going to be bigger than any of the other trees because it's in the foreground. After the foreground comes the middle ground. And things get a little bit smaller, less detailed as they go back. Finally, we have the background, furthest away, and the least detailed. We can see my little tiny trees here in my background. Our background also has the horizon line, which is the line where the land meets the sky, which is here. So we need to include all of those three parts in our picture as well, okay? And remember, as you go back, foreground, middle ground, and background, things get smaller as they get further away, okay? So, we're going to start by drawing our snow globe. I'm going to draw in black marker, but if you don't have that, you can use a pencil or a black pen. That is up to you. I'm going to trace a circle, which I have a plate here that I'm going to trace. If you don't have that, you can just freehand your circle as well. All right. So I'm going to start by tracing around my plate. Make sure your circle is not super tiny. We're going to add 2 vertical lines for part of the stand. Connect them with a slightly curved line. And then we're going to add 2 diagonal lines for the next part of our stand. And we're going to connect those as well. Okay, it's a little crooked, but it's fine. From there, we're ready to start our foreground, middle ground, and background. So remember, the foreground is always going to be at the bottom. I'm going to put mine about here. Slightly wavy. Middle ground. And then my background is going to be the mountains. And we don't want just regular triangle mountains. We want to give them a little bit of a rocky texture. Okay? Now from there, I'm going to start adding some details, okay? So this is where you get to make your picture your own. You might want to change it up so that it doesn't look exactly like mine. All right, I'm going to add some trees now. I'm going to switch to my smaller Sharpie, actually. So my foreground tree, would it be bigger or smaller than one that I added to my middle ground or background? If you said bigger, you're correct. So in winter, we're mostly going to see pine trees, which kind of look like Christmas trees. So I'm going to start with a triangle, add my branches. Add another triangle that comes out from that. Go. So there's my tree. I want to fill it in with some more branches so we can't see through it as much. I could add another layer. That's up to you. I'm going to add a tree trunk and color that in. Now I could add more trees across here. I could add one to my middle ground. So as I said, we need to get smaller as we go back. Ooh, made that a little bigger than I meant to. Okay, and then if I go back, I could add a little line in there for my ground. And then even smaller as we get to our background. You're going to have to be careful that it doesn't look like a blob. If you wanted something like a road or a river, you could do that. So basically all you're doing when you do that is you start at the middle ground line, and I'm going to do kind of like an S. Then I'm going to go back there, start right at that line, and as I come forward, my line's going to get bigger, okay? You could add little dashed lines that get smaller as they go back, if you're making a road, or some water texture, if that's what you're looking for. You could put a snowman in here, you could put a little house. So take your time adding your details. You could put a tent up here like Jen Arani has in some of her pictures. I'm going to add some lines here since we can see. The line for my middle ground just to kind of distract. Could add a little fire. Some rocks to sit on. All right, when you have all the details you want in there, you could always add a little bit more texture in here. And then we're going to add a little bit three-dimensional shadow to our mountains as well. Okay, so on each mountain, I'm going to draw, starting at the top, I'm going to go out, and instead of it being just a triangle, we're going to add that extra side that we can see here, and we're going to make some lines on there. So they only go on the same side of the mountain. So I'm on the right side of this mountain and the right side of this mountain. We can't go on both sides. Then you're going to add little diagonal lines to that. To create the shadow effect. Put them fairly close together. You can also add little kind of like dents in the snow, because usually the snow is not all the same throughout the whole thing. And that'll make it look a bit more realistic too. Okay. All right. I'd probably keep working and adding more detail in here, but that's good for now. For our sky, you can choose the colors you want to use. I would recommend cool colors, but that's up to you. You do want to use colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, which are called analogous colors. And that's just because they go together better. So you can look at some of the examples and choose from there. I'm going to use markers for mine with a purple. I'm going to try to make mine blend together a bit. So I'm going to kind of layer them on top of each other. Go slowly when you're coloring around your mountains and things so we don't overlap that. All right. See how I'm layering the two? That's going to hopefully create a little bit of an ombre effect. And you can go back and forth over that. I'm going to show you how we're going to mix them in a minute. Oops. I can always cut this out when I'm finished if I accidentally went out of the line, or trace around the edge with a black marker to cover up any mistakes that I made. Okay, use the teal to finish up, or green, that would work too. And to blend my colors, I'm going to try to use some water and a paintbrush to turn my markers kind of into paint. All right, so I already have that over here. You don't want a ton of water because we don't want to rip our paper, but you just kind of go on top of what you've already done. And that should blend your colors together a little bit. It just makes it so there's not so much of a line between the different colors. And if you don't have water cup and a paintbrush, that's fine too. You can leave it as it is. Okay? And I would fix that little area there. All right, you can add some color to the bottom of yours. Here's mine. You could use a white crayon when it's dry to add some stars to the sky. Lots of options here. But when you're finished, take a picture of your work and submit it to me so I can give you credit. Have fun.